when the world breaks around you. There are moments in life when everything you've been holding together suddenly slips through your fingers. The plans you trusted collapse. The people you counted on disappear. The stability you built cracks like thin glass. It happens quietly sometimes. A single phone call, a message, a sudden shift. And sometimes it hits like a storm you never saw coming. In those moments, the world doesn't just fall apart around you. It feels like it's falling apart inside you. Your mind starts racing. Why now? Why me? What do I do? Fear gets loud. Overthinking gets louder. And the feeling of losing control becomes almost unbearable. But here's the truth the Stoics taught for thousands of years. When life breaks, you are not meant to break with it. The world has always been unpredictable. Fortune has always been unstable. Human life has always been fragile. What changes is how we respond, not what happens. Epictetus said that the real disaster isn't what happens to you. It's the belief that you can't survive it. This video is about that moment. The moment when everything seems lost, and you're forced to decide who you will be now. Not who you were when things were easy. Not who you pretended to be for others. But who you become when the mask drops and the chaos hits. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending everything is fine. It's about learning how to stay upright when everything around you is falling. It's about training the inner strength that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's about discovering that even when the world breaks, something inside you doesn't have to. This is your survival manual, not for a perfect life, but for a real one. A life where storms come, and you learn to stand anyway. The Stoic premise: you can survive more than you think. One of the most powerful and most uncomfortable truths at the core of Stoic philosophy is this: you are far stronger than your mind allows you to believe in moments of crisis. Most people don't break because life becomes impossible. They break because fear convinces them they will break. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius lived through plague, betrayal, war, the death of children, and still ruled with clarity. Epictetus was born into slavery, beaten, and left permanently disabled, and still became one of the greatest teachers in history. Seneca lost everything multiple times: wealth, status, even personal safety. Yet wrote about calm with a level of focus most people never reach. Why? Because they recognized something most people ignore. Pain is real. Fear is real. Chaos is real. But the story you tell yourself about these things decides whether you collapse or rise. Stoicism isn't built on pretending life is easy. It's built on the exact opposite: accepting life's brutality without letting it define you. Most of us underestimate our resilience because we confuse discomfort with danger. We feel emotional pain and assume it will destroy us. We lose something important and assume we'll never recover. We face uncertainty and assume we're not capable. But survival, real survival, is often less dramatic than we imagine. It's not about being fearless. It's about staying steady while fear screams in your ear. It's about reminding yourself, this is not the end. This is the beginning of my adaptation. Epictetus put it perfectly. You are stronger than your suffering. He didn't mean suffering isn't painful. He meant that pain doesn't get to decide your future unless you let it. Think about the times you thought you wouldn't make it through something: a breakup, a loss, a betrayal, a failure that crushed you, a moment you believed would haunt you forever. Yet here you are, You survived what your past self thought was impossible. You adapted to what once terrified you. You grew through what once overwhelmed you. That pattern doesn't stop now. It never stops. The Stoic premise is simple. You don't know your limits. You only know your fears. And those two things are never the same. Life will hit you hard. It will shake your plans, your identity, your expectations, your heart. And in those moments, your brain will whisper, "This is too much. You can't handle this." But the Stoics teach you to answer back, "I've already survived more than I thought I could, and I will survive this too." The foundation of Stoic resilience is the belief that you are built for hardship, not broken by it. It's the understanding that inner strength isn't something you find. It's something you uncover in the middle of chaos. When the world falls apart, the Stoic doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" He asks, "What part of me is about to be revealed?" Because the truth is this: you don't know how strong you are until strength is your only option. And when life forces that moment on you, Stoicism gives you the tools to face it. Radical acceptance. Seeing reality. Without panic. Radical acceptance is one of the hardest Stoic skills to learn, and one of the most liberating, because it forces you to look directly at reality without collapsing into fear, denial, or self-deception. This is where most people fail, not because life is too brutal, but because they refuse to see what is and cling desperately to what should be. The Stoics understood a painful truth. Suffering doesn't come from events themselves. It comes from your refusal to accept that those events have happened. You lose someone. You lose a job. You lose a version of your life you believed would last forever. And instead of facing the situation as it is, the mind spirals into panic. This can't be real. This shouldn't have happened. I'm not ready for this. This ruins everything. But reality doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care what you expected. It doesn't wait for you to feel prepared. It simply is, indifferent, unmoved, unbending. Radical acceptance isn't passive. It's not defeat. It's not resignation. And it's definitely not pretending everything is fine. Radical acceptance is the act of meeting reality as it stands without adding unnecessary suffering to it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but your estimate of it." Most people read this as philosophy. He meant it as survival, because panic destroys your clarity. Panic narrows your vision. Panic locks you inside your own fear until you can't see the situation, only your emotional reaction to it. When the Stoics talk about seeing things as they are talking about the ability to confront reality with a calm, observational mind, even when the situation feels unbearable. This is the opposite of modern emotional culture, where everything is amplified, dramatized, shared, dissected, and turned into a story you can't escape. Stoics reject all of that. They choose to see facts without adding fire. A Stoic doesn't say, "This shouldn't have happened to me." He says, "It has happened. Now what?" A Stoic doesn't say, "I can't handle this." He says, "I don't like this, but I can face it." A Stoic doesn't fight the existence of difficulty. He fights his own illusions about how life is supposed to be. Radical acceptance begins with a single, brutally honest step. Stop arguing with reality, because when you argue with reality, you lose every time, and you still end up in the same place. Acceptance isn't saying the event is good. It's acknowledging that the event is real. And only by acknowledging its reality can you begin to respond with strength. Consider the moments you panic the most. A relationship ends. A plan falls apart. Someone betrays you. You lose something you thought you couldn't live without. The pain isn't only in the event, it's in the shock, the disbelief, the mental resistance, the desperate clinging to, not this. But once you accept what happened, the emotional storm weakens. Clarity begins to form. You stop drowning in "why me?" and start seeing "what now?" Stoics trained this skill daily. Meditating on worst-case scenarios wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. It made reality less terrifying because nothing arrived as a complete surprise. Epictetus taught his students to remind themselves, this too is human, this too is survivable. He didn't say it to numb the pain. He said it to keep the mind from collapsing into panic, the first thing that destroys resilience. Radical acceptance reframes crisis into something you can actually work with. This is happening. It's painful. I didn't choose it, but I can respond with strength instead of fear. Because once you stop resisting reality, you unlock power. And once you see things clearly, you can move forward intelligently instead of chaotically. The Stoics believed that clarity replaces chaos, and acceptance replaces panic. Not because the situation becomes easier, but because you become steady enough to face it. Pain may be inevitable, but panic is optional. And radical acceptance is how you remove the panic without denying the pain. Emotional control and chaos, holding the inner line. When life falls apart, emotions don't ask for permission. They surge, they overwhelm, they try to take command of your thoughts, your actions, your sense of reality itself. And most people let them, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught another way. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about preventing emotions from becoming your master when everything in your life pushes you toward collapse. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, betrayal, war, loss, illness, yet he wrote constantly about one thing: hold the inner line. That was his philosophy in a single sentence. Not, don't feel anything. Not, be a stone. But, do not abandon your inner post when chaos demands you run. This is where emotional control begins. Not with numbness, but with discipline. Because chaos makes one thing instinctive: react. React fast. React blindly. React emotionally. But Stoics understood that the first reaction is almost always the worst one. Fear exaggerates danger. Anger destroys perspective. Despair erases options. And panic turns a difficult situation into a disaster. When the outside world is chaotic, the untrained mind becomes chaotic with it. The Stoic mind does not. Why? Because Stoics don't try to control the chaos. They control their interpretation of it. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't mean this as spiritual poetry. He meant, no matter how violent the storm, you control the helm inside your own thoughts. Never give that up. Let's break down what emotional control actually looks like in a crisis. 1. Emotional control begins with recognition. You cannot regulate what you refuse to acknowledge. Stoics trained themselves to observe emotion the moment it arises. Fear tightening the chest, anger heating the mind, sadness draining energy, uncertainty clouding focus. Instead of fighting the emotion or pretending it's not there, they name it. This is fear. This is anger. This is grief. This is confusion. Why? Because the moment you name an emotion, you separate yourself from it. You are experiencing it, but you are not identical to it. That distance is everything. 2. Slow down. Your first reaction, chaos, pushes you to act immediately. Stoicism teaches you to pause, even for a few seconds, and reclaim control. The Stoics believed that time is a shield. A small pause turns emotional impulse into conscious action. You can lose everything in one emotional second. You can save everything in that same second by waiting. A message arrives that devastates you. A person betrays you. Someone disrespects you. A crisis knocks the air out of you. The untrained mind reacts instantly. The Stoic mind says, "Not yet. Let the first wave pass." And the wave always passes. 3. Ask, what part of this is my judgment? Stoics knew that most emotional suffering doesn't come from events, but from what we tell ourselves about those events. He left me. I'm worthless. I failed. Everything is over. This is hard. I can't handle it. I lost something. Life is unfair. The emotion isn't the problem. The interpretation is. Marcus wrote, "Remove your judgments and the pain disappears." He didn't mean that events stop hurting. He meant that emotional agony is multiplied when you add stories, meaning catastrophe and self-blame. Stoic training removes the extra suffering, the part you create in your mind. 4. Shift from emotion to action. The Stoic response to chaos is simple. Feel, assess, act. Not feel, react, regret. Stoicism doesn't try to erase emotions. It tries to keep them from hijacking your life. When you feel overwhelmed, the Stoic question is, what is the next right action available to me? Not the perfect action, not the final solution, just the next step that moves you forward. Action restores clarity. Action grounds you. Action gives you back a sense of agency, even when you can't fix the whole situation. And emotional storms lose their power when you start moving. 5. Your inner fortress is built before the crisis, not during it, Moex. Didn't wait for life to collapse before training emotional control. They practice daily. Exposure to discomfort, reflection, journaling, rehearsing difficult scenarios, focusing attention, delaying impulsive desires, choosing voluntary hardship. All of this was emotional conditioning. So when real chaos arrived, they had muscle memory. People who fall apart during crisis aren't weak. They're untrained. Stoicism makes sure you're not. 6. Control your internal dialogue. Nothing shapes emotional states more than the sentences you repeat internally. Imagine two minds facing the same crisis. Mind. 1. This is the end. I can't handle this. Mind. This is painful, but I will remain steady. I can face this. Same event. Two completely different realities. Stoics trained themselves to talk like warriors, not victims. Not with ego, with clarity. Epictetus told his students to repeat, "This is nothing new. Humans have survived worse, not as comfort, but as truth." 7. Holding the inner line. This is the core of emotional control. Stay in command of your response, even when you cannot command the situation. Emotional control is the ability to stand inside the storm and say, "I decide who I am in this moment." Because chaos can take your plans, your comfort, your stability, but only you can surrender your composure. Holding the inner line means your values do not collapse, your judgment does not scatter, your identity does not dissolve, your strength does not vanish, your dignity does not fall apart with the world. It is not easy. It is earned. But it is possible. The storm may be louder than you, but it doesn't have to be stronger. What you control, your anchor in the storm. When life throws you into chaos, the first thing that collapses is the illusion of control. Suddenly, everything feels unstable. The future, your relationships, your identity, your sense of direction. Chaos pulls you into a mental spiral where every thought becomes a prediction of disaster, and every emotion feels stronger than your ability to handle it. But here is the truth most people forget in moments of crisis. You still have control, just not over the things you've been trying to control. You can't stop the storm, but you can hold your line. You can control the only things that were ever truly yours to command. And these things form the anchor that keeps you grounded when everything else is shaking. Stoics called this the sphere of control. Today we call it psychological stability, but the meaning is the same. When you return to what's inside your control, you return to yourself. There are 3 pillars of control you always carry with you, no matter what is happening outside. 1. Your focus, the direction of your mind. Where your attention goes, your emotional state follows. Focus is not just a mental function, it's a steering wheel. When your mind fixates on uncertainty, your thoughts multiply into fear. When you focus on what you can affect, your brain shifts into problem-solving mode. You can't stop your first reaction, but you absolutely control what you give your energy to afterward. Focus determines the quality of your internal world. Focus determines whether panic grows or fades. Focus determines whether you collapse or adapt. Even in the worst moment, you can choose to bring your attention back to something stable. Your breath, your surroundings, your next action, your present moment awareness. That choice alone can interrupt the cycle of fear. 2. Your actions. The only force that changes your reality. You don't control outcomes. You don't control timing. You don't control how people behave. But you always control your next step. Action is the antidote to helplessness. You can feel terrified and still do the right thing. You can feel confused and still move forward. You can feel defeated and still take a small step. One tiny action can stabilize an entire emotional storm because the body is designed to calm the mind when it's in motion. Action brings clarity. Action creates momentum. Action shifts you from victim to participant, from overwhelmed to engaged. When everything is out of control, your next action becomes your leverage point. It might be small, it might be imperfect, but it's yours. 3. Your interpretation. The meaning you give to reality. This is the most underestimated form of control. You choose what story you attach to the events of your life. 2 people can go through the same loss, the same failure, the same chaos, and one crumbles while the other becomes stronger. Not because the event was different, but because the internal interpretation was. Interpretation is the lens through which you understand your world. You can see the moment as punishment or as a turning point. You can see chaos as danger or as initiation. You can see pain as something that breaks you or something that reveals you. You cannot control what happens, but you control the frame around it. And sometimes reframing the situation, not as the end, but as a challenge, a lesson, a test of your character, is what keeps you from collapsing under the weight of it. The anchor in the storm. When the world feels like it's spinning, your anchor isn't found in the outside world. It's found in what remains stable inside you. Your focus, your actions, your interpretation. These are the boundaries of your true control. And when you return to them, you stop drowning in the noise of things you can't change. People break, not because life gets too heavy, but because they try to carry what was never theirs to hold. When you stop fighting uncontrollable forces and instead invest all your energy into the things you control, you regain clarity, strength, and direction. This is how you build resilience. This is how you make it through the storm. Not by overpowering the chaos, but by anchoring yourself so deeply in your own control that the chaos can't pull you away. Turning pain into power. Building strength from ruins. Pain is not just something you endure. In Stoic philosophy, it is raw material, clay, fuel, the very substance from which strength is shaped. When life collapses around you and everything you relied on turns to dust, the Stoic approach is not to pretend the suffering isn't real. It is to pick up the rubble piece by piece and deliberately rebuild yourself into a stronger, sharper, more resilient version. Hardship is not a detour from the path, it is the path. The Stoics believed that every wound carries potential, not poetic potential, practical potential. When something breaks your heart, it exposes what truly matters. When life humiliates you, it shows where your ego was fragile. When fate takes something from you, it reveals what you were overly attached to. Pain becomes a teacher that does not whisper, but shouts, forcing you to examine your foundations and rebuild them on something more stable than comfort or illusion. Turning pain into power begins with refusing to let suffering be meaningless. You choose to assign meaning to it. You refuse to let it reduce you. You let it forge you. The first transformation happens internally. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you shift toward, "What can this make me become?" This single mental pivot changes despair into direction. You stop drowning in the question and begin swimming toward the answer. You stop feeling like a victim of the universe and start acting like an apprentice of life. Stoics didn't glorify pain. They simply refused to waste it. They understood that suffering sharpens the mind the way fire tempers steel. It strips away the unnecessary and forces you to focus only on what is essential. When everything crumbles, you discover what inside you cannot be broken. That inner core, your reason, your character, your ability to choose your response, becomes the seed of your rebirth. And rebuilding from that seed creates a version of you that is less fragile, less dependent on external circumstances, and more anchored in inner strength. In moments of collapse, you are presented with a choice that defines the rest of your life. You can let the pain close you off, harden you in bitterness, and shrink your future. Or you can use it as a training ground, a forge, a personal revolution. You can rise not despite the suffering, but because of it. This is the Stoic idea of transformation. Not avoiding pain, not being crushed by it, but using it as the force that propels you into a higher level of resilience and wisdom. Every setback becomes an invitation to develop discipline. Every loss becomes a lesson in detachment. Every failure becomes data. Every betrayal becomes clarity. When you adopt this mindset, life loses its power to break you. Pain becomes energy you redirect into progress. Chaos becomes an arena where you test your strength. Suffering becomes the reason you grow instead of the reason you stop. Turning pain into power is not a motivational slogan. It is a disciplined practice. It means sitting with your wounds instead of numbing them. It means learning from the storm instead of waiting helplessly for it to pass. It means deciding that what tried to destroy you will become the very thing that builds you. And when you emerge from the ruins, not untouched, not the same, but stronger, you understand one of the deepest Stoic truths. Life's worst moments are often the birthplace of your best self. The Stoic Survivor. Becoming someone. Chaos can't break. When life collapses, most people wait for the storm to end. Stoic survivors do something different. They become the kind of person who can walk through the storm without losing themselves. And that is the ultimate transformation this entire guide has been building toward. Not avoiding suffering, not escaping hardship, but becoming unbreakable in the face of it. The truth is simple and brutal. Life will always fall apart in some way. Plans fail. People betray you. Dreams collapse. Chaos arrives without permission. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without destruction. It promises the strength to rise from that destruction stronger than before. A Stoic survivor understands one essential principle. You cannot control the world, but you can control the kind of person you show up as when the world tests you. That identity, stable, disciplined, committed, clear-minded, becomes your armor. When emotions rise, you stand firm. When uncertainty grows, you breathe deeper. When everything around you is shaking, you remain grounded in the only thing that cannot be taken from you: your inner character. Becoming unbreakable is not a single moment. It is a series of decisions, repeated in silence when no one is watching. Choosing discipline over impulse, choosing clarity over panic, choosing courage over avoidance, choosing action over despair. These choices build an internal structure that chaos cannot collapse. And here is the final truth. Strength is not built when life is easy. Strength is built exactly in the moments you wish you could escape. The pain you are surviving right now is not the thing that destroys you. It is the thing that shapes you into someone who can survive anything. Stoic survivors are not born. They are forged. And every moment of fear, heartbreak, loss, confusion, or uncertainty is part of that forging process. You don't need life to get easier. You need to get stronger. And you can. You already are. If you are here, reading this, searching for resilience instead of surrender, you are already walking the path of a Stoic survivor. Carry this with you. Chaos may shake your world, but it cannot break a person who has decided to stand firm. Let the world do what it will. You will remain unmoved. You will remain sovereign over yourself. And that is the deepest form of survival. If this chapter helped you, if it gave you strength, clarity, or even just a sense of direction, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing what part resonated with you most. Your support helps this project grow and helps these ideas reach the people who need them most.